And we are live. So happy Thursday, guys. I am coming from you to you from a slightly darkened room because I've just invested in office space. So you haven't got my shiny 1% background, but the call will be just as good as usual. Less about me and my situation. We've got Neil on the call today, Neil Stockham. Neil has kindly taken 20, 30 minutes out of his day to discuss the experiences he just had. He just finished within the 1% blueprint. By my account, Neil absolutely smashed it, but obviously I want you to hear from him. Before we dig into that, Neil, do you want to just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do?
Sure. Morning, everybody. Thanks, Luke. So, Neil Stockham, I'm 48 years old, married with two daughters, one 14, one 12. I work as a partner in the accountancy firm BDO and advise companies in the retail and consumer market sector on how to organise their tax affairs. So, with that combination and an aging mother, I've got lots of different competing demands on my time.
Yeah, so a very busy man by all accounts, right?
Yep.
Cool. Well, that being said, let's kind of kick off and dig into your journey that you've just been on and where you are today. So, I think coming back to the start, rewind a few months ago before we decided to work together. I think you probably might have been one of your colleagues' post or saw some of my stuff on LinkedIn. You decided to give me a nudge and get in touch, and we booked a chat. What was going on with you back then that sort of motivated you for having a conversation with me, a coach, someone like this? What was going on?
So it was sort of back in June time, and obviously we were a couple of months out of the COVID period. Well, still lots of stuff going on, but clearly that had been a massive change for all of us. And I saw a post on LinkedIn from one of my fellow partners who I didn't actually know. And it really resonated with me. And he talked about a lot of the same experiences that I was going through, a lot of the challenges. And the biggest difference, Luke, was that, reading his story, he'd taken some positive action and made some real life changing adjustments. And I think I had got to a stage where there was lots of things ruminating around in my head. I think when we had that first conversation, I said, I feel like I'm turning into my late father with, I was overweight. I was definitely low on energy. I had lots of stress going on from different parts and all the different roles I play. And I don't think I freely admit I wasn't coping, and I certainly wasn't taking positive action to move that forward. So I recognised I wanted to change, and seeing the post from my fellow partner Ollie back actually gave me the incentive to pick up the phone and call you. And the rest, as they say, is history.
It's history, yeah. And I think, not to belittle your situation and where you were at, and same with Ollie because he was in a similar situation as well. I think sadly it's a very common scenario for a lot of guys out there, and I think it comes from that well-intentioned place. If you've got loads of people to look after, you want to be successful, you want to thrive in business, and all of that. But then often what ends up happening is the royal we, you sacrifice ourselves and our mental and physical well-being at the altar of that, and then things can start to feel a bit overwhelming, and it's hard to then put your best foot forward and take action given that situation because there's so much disparate stuff going on. And so that kind of slightly lack of control, and when I say lack of control, we're not talking about drinking vodka at 8 a.m, we're just talking about not really being able to tangibly put your best foot forward in any area and feeling like you're sort of stagnating in those areas. I think that's quite a hard place to operate from, right?
It is. It's a really hard place to operate. In a nutshell, I think I would describe it, Luke, as I was reacting to everything that was going on around, rather than responding in a sort of considered, sensible way and focusing on things that I can control and do something positive with.
Yeah, and I think when this kind of firefighting state, again, that's not an empowered place to operate from because, as we know, I talk about this a lot, and like life isn't all unicorns and rainbows. We can't control a lot of the lemons that life throws at us, but we can control our state and then how we choose to react to any of those given situations, and that's the key differential, I think. And if it does just feel like shit, everything's always at me, that's hard, Okay, so that's kind of where we were when we first spoke. And as I said, I think a lot of guys would probably resonate with that. And I think it can feel hard because when you're in that sort of state, it's like, well, I'm so busy, I've got so much on. and none of that's going to go away. Well, how the hell do I sort of start to plot a course or do anything and start to take action? I think that's the key thing. It's just taking a step, right? And your first step was picking up the phone or getting in touch and going, right, let's have a conversation, which is what we did. And we had a great chat. You were honest about your situation, and we got going. Let's kind of fast forward from then to like Neil version, we called it Neil version 2, right? Sat here today.
Yeah.
What have been the key successes, and what have you achieved, and the changes that you've made, like as you sit today? And then I think, well, if we get clear on some of that, then maybe we can sort of go back and dig through what's helped you sort of achieve some of that stuff.
Perfect. So I would say the biggest change I've noticed is mindset, and it's understanding how nutrition, exercise, your state of mind all interrelate, and being able to put together a framework and a routine around that can really help you through your day and the challenges that inevitably come up. How has that manifested itself? Well, I think over the 3-month program when I was working with you, Luke, I lost just over a stone in weight, so around about a pound or a couple of pounds each week. So it was steady, sustainable. I built a fairly short but positive morning routine where there's a bit of exercise, a bit of clarity of thought, and some quiet time, and really thinking about what I need to achieve for the day or a couple of days ahead, and giving myself some space to really think about that. And then I think understanding, along with the weight and the exercise, that actually you've got to look after what goes into your body, whether that's making sure you're drinking. I know it's a common cliche, making sure you're drinking plenty of water, but actually looking at the nutrients that are going into your body. Are they actually going to help you sustain what you're doing going forward? So fundamentally, I've gone from someone who was not comfortable at all with the way their body looked 3-4 months ago. I was definitely walking around sucking in that stomach, and now I feel comfortable with the shirt tucked in. I feel like I've got a huge amount more energy, and life still presents its challenges, but being able to navigate through those and work out what I can do to make a positive difference is a really healthy place to be.
Yeah, I think that's the powerful place to be, right? It's
Yeah,
because, like we said, and it's being able to control the controllables. And if you're taking ownership and controlling and leveraging what you've got going on and controlling
yeah,
what you can, well, that's all you ever can do. And then, but then
right,
that then helps and plays out in all aspects because you've got the foundations right. Well, then you can better address stressful situations at work, difficult clients if they are, situations at home, looking after your mum, all that sort of stuff. And none of that's ever going to go away. And objectively, it's challenging and difficult. But then the state that you approach it, that's the bit that's always under your control. And I think
yeah,
that's the bit that's important that allows this, what you're talking there, right?
yeah, definitely. Definitely.
What then, if we were to sort of go back and look at some of this, what do you think has helped you achieve that and get into this
Yeah.
state that we're talking about?
Well, I think what's great about the program is your starting point with anybody who joins the cohort is let's work with what we've got, right? And my situation at the start was pretty appalling in terms of fitness, weight, mindset, and we just play what's in front of us, and we start off by putting together some really simple but effective basic building blocks. And then starting with those building blocks over a 12-week period, actually look to increment and add small little changes that enhance those foundations, make them stronger. And ultimately, at the end of 12 weeks, you've got, well, I certainly came out with a really positive routine that I can sustain going forward. And I think what's really helped is that you recognize that we're all busy people and we've all got lots of competing demands. And it's actually working out what you can do within that framework
Mhm.
to find an extra 15 minutes here or 10 minutes there, and build it into your daily routine so that you can sustain it going forward. And fundamentally, I think once you've sort of started to change your habits, those habits then become building blocks, and those building blocks then become your routine.
Yeah, and I think that's powerful, because having habit, routine, and structure in your life stops you being reactive because you've got the control. But then on top of that, always things happen, right? And stuff can kibosh that. And it's knowing that, well, actually, part of being disciplined is actually knowing that I can be flexible. And, oh, I can't do that. Oh, it's all gone wrong. No, no, no. That's something that we really want to push against. That, well, no, it hasn't all gone wrong. Well, you could just do that instead, or just do that instead. Or given I've got certain things I need for my mental, physical well-being, well, then, okay, I can't do this exact thing perfectly, but what's the basic thing that I can do? And being able to flex and flip between those sort of states is also important as well, because what we aren't is automatons and robots, right? Life hits us all over the place, and being able to roll with that, I think, is really important too.
Yeah, and I think through our conversations through the program, and one of the things, just for the people listening, is that each week a group of the cohort get together for an accountability call with Luke, and basically talk about what you've done that week, what you found difficult, what you've really found successful. Share those stories, make it real for the other people on the call, and there's people at different stages, from those who just joined to those ahead of you on the program. And actually sharing those real life stories and challenges really, really helps you through the program. And you realize that actually your situation is not particularly unique. You may come at it from a different perspective, but actually there's lots of shared challenges out there that you can help each other work through.
Yeah, and again, I think that's an empowering place to be. And it's not in a, I always get this word wrong, German, Schadenfreude, Schadenfreude. It's not in a ha ha, look at them. It's quite the reverse. It's more of a, well, shit, there's other guys here that are struggling with this. It ain't just me versus the universe. But there's other guys with very similar demands and times and, stresses at work and all that stuff. But they're taking ownership and they're able to take control. And I think that's powerful. I think the other thing is,
So I was going to say, one of the examples I would give there was, one of the things you got us to do, and I've really enjoyed through the program, is the journaling.
Mhm.
And I remember in the early weeks, I was struggling with, why am I doing this? Is it really going to help? And then I was listening to one of the other gents on the call, who said, I'm now at week 11, and I came across this real tough problem at work. What I would normally have done in that situation is just react and get something sorted, but just throw myself into it. And he said what I did was I took 15 minutes out. I sat quietly with the problem, wrote down the pros and cons, and then responded. And that really resonated with me and helped me through those challenges and work out what I needed to do. So I think we talked, Luke, about sitting down each night, putting that phone aside, making sure that you're present in the situation, and then writing out in handwriting, 3 things I've done well, 3 things that could have gone better, and what I could do about those. 3 important things I've got to get sorted for the next morning. And then just looking back and saying, actually, giving yourself a pat on the back for how far you've come,
Yeah,
which we don't often do, particularly as blokes, I think. So,
no. And I think we can get caught up in a microcosm of the day to day and the week to week. And if you just take a little step back, and just anyone in life, right, you might be, oh, everything's a bit difficult. And you take a step back, well, actually, my trajectory here is pretty good. It's just day to day, it can be a bit choppy. But I think that you said there, that's a real powerful one. And when we talk about discipline and ownership, that sounds quite masculine, and it is. And I think maybe that can make people think that means it's just like rah, rah, telling people to fuck off, and that's not what it's about at all. Being
it's not at
disciplined,
all.
no, absolutely not. Like, being disciplined is being able to go, actually, this guy said something at work, and my initial reaction would be to tell him to fuck off and whatever else, and that might be career limiting. What I'm going to do is go, okay, thanks. Let's just discuss this later. And being disciplined is going back, sitting back and going, what's really going on? And maybe actually when you sit down and do that, realize actually he isn't being a dickhead. He's worried and reacting to something else. And actually, if I'm able to stop and see that, I can then talk to him at a completely different level and probably get a
Yeah,
much better outcome out of this entire situation. That isn't
yeah,
about being bullshit and forthright. That's about being able to
yeah,
stop and think. And for
And
me, being uncommon, being your best, that's a very powerful place to operate from.
very powerful. And again, towards the end of the program, you get us to listen to one of the podcasts by the Navy SEAL chap.
Yeah.
And that is brilliant in itself, and I will continue to listen to that on the train journeys going into London and what have you. But actually, what you get from that is a couple of things, I think, or certainly what I got was, just take that first step and get cracking, and that will make a difference, and it will create some momentum in its own right. Two, whatever situation you're in, you will always come across problems and challenges, and you can't run away from that. You've got to go into that head on, take that first step, work out what's in your control, what's not in your control, and move through it. And the third thing you learn is everybody goes through this. There are times when you get up in the morning and you don't want to do 30 burpees or whatever it may be, but pushing through that, and the example I gave you was I turned 48 towards the end of the program, and I celebrated with doing 48 burpees.
It's amazing.
In the morning. Could I have done that at the beginning of the program? Absolutely not.
No.
Would I choose to do that many again every day? No.
No.
But knowing you can do it and just putting yourself through that sets you up for a really powerful day.
And that's the whole mindset thing as well, because I think exercise is incredibly powerful in physical and mental well-being. I believe in inextricably linked. And when you talk about personal development, because the way we do this, it isn't just exercise, it's not just nutrition, it's the whole piece. But I think when you tie those two things together, maybe it's because it's less cerebral, people maybe think that no, the exercise isn't as important, but it is, but in a different way. But it's like, how can that relate? Well, it's not about doing 48 burpees or 50 burpees. It's not the actual the physical act of that. It's showing yourself you can. Because if we'd started at the start and gone, right, Neil, right, first week, do 48 burpees, you'd have gone, this guy's gone fucking mental. What's he talking about?
Well,
then you come to the end of the process.
After the first week where I struggled with 20 squats, 20 press ups, and 20 sit ups 3 times. So,
but then all of a sudden, you get to a point where you can do that and you're not even thinking about it. And that's the same with the burpees. It doesn't mean it's not hard and challenging, but showing yourself you can do that and achieve that and how far you've come, that's so powerful, because that plays out everywhere then. You're faced with a really shitty situation at work and you're it's tough or whatever. You're like, no, hold up a second. What can I do and how can we make this work? I thought I couldn't do that thing there and I can do that. And so that's where this whole lot starts to sort of have parallels. And then, but then that bleeds into work. Well, I just dealt with that. Well, of course I'm going to go and do this then. And that then becomes a very positive, virtuous cycle across the piece. And like you said, I passionately believe this. There's always going to be problems, but it's like how you choose to deal with that. And when you talked about the curls earlier, this is something I say to everyone, is that like the way we grow and learn and adapt isn't by doing some life hacks, shine life hacks perfectly. It's like mess up, make mistakes. As long as you're willing to embrace that and learn, that's how you grow and adapt. We don't actually get personal growth and development through just doing things and it all being hunky dory. When things go wrong and it sets the cat amongst the pigeons and you feel a certain way and you maybe want to pull the plug and you have all this negative self-doubt, actually that's the bit, if you're willing to embrace that, where you learn, grow and adapt, and that's where we discuss it. And that's where this stuff, I believe, becomes sustainable. It's that not shying away from that discomfort, leaning into
right.
it.
And I think the biggest thing that comes out on those calls is, yes, you can resonate with other people's situations, but virtually all the calls that I attended had the single message, which is, okay, well, you found that tough, or you found this tough. What can you do to make a slight tweak? What can you do to find 5 minutes to do that? What can you do to do an extra repetition or find something? And it's that what can you do that starts to build and create momentum over time.
Yeah, it's the Jocko, the podcast you referred to. His thing is, and I wish I'd invented it, but I haven't. But it's like X situation's horrible. Good. This has happened. Good. Why good? Well, because we can learn. And so, and it's slightly trite, because obviously you can play that out, and it can be, you can think of a very extreme negative scenario, and you still say good. But the reality is, if you can still apply that, and that speaks to that. And I think being in that state of mind, that's a very different place to operate from versus what we were talking about at the start. Okay, well, I think that's been incredibly helpful, Neil. I'm sure for anyone watching. A couple of final questions. Last one's a bit of a curveball, and if we've already covered it, don't worry. But like, of the whole process, what, if anything, do you think was the most surprising? Or were you a bit like, oh, I didn't expect that?
I think it builds, Luke, from the linkage between mindset, nutrition, and exercise. And those building blocks allow you to look at things through different lenses and ultimately create some space for yourself. And what that space allows you to do is one, think, two, be present with either those around you, whether that's at home or work, and just stop and pause for thought before you go headlong into something. And I think that is the biggest learning point that I've taken through the whole program.
Awesome. I think that's a real powerful one, and it's that not being instantly reactive, right? Awesome. Well, look, Neil, given everything we said, we know you're a very, very busy man, so I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Firstly, thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure anyone who's watching will have got a lot out of that, so appreciate it. If anyone's watching this, let's say they're in a similar situation to where you were a few months back, thinking I'm, struggling a bit, everything, not got as much control as I want, and just not feeling the best, maybe interested in having a conversation, but they're sitting on the fence. What would you say to someone in that situation?
I would say have a look at those testimonials on Instagram, LinkedIn. Pick up the phone, have a chat with Luke, and don't be afraid to take that first step, because that first step is how you create momentum and make things better.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, on that very positive note, Neil, it's been an absolute pleasure. As you know, I think you're an absolute legend. So thank you so much for your time today. Much appreciated. Anyone else who's watching this, if you are interested in having a conversation or chat with me, drop me a note in the comments or ping me a direct message and we can have a conversation. On that note, Neil, all the best. Thank you. Speak soon, and thank you very much, guys. Have a great week. Cheers.
Look forward to it. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.